So in my previous video, I talked about the original Manhunt, its story, gameplay mechanics, level design, pretty much everything. If you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend pausing this one and watching that one first. I'm going to compare and contrast the first game's mechanics to this one's in this video, so while it's not necessary to watch the first, it might add some context. I'll put a link in the description below if you're interested. I don't want to waste any more time, so let's go ahead and jump right into the game. So, Manhunt 2 released October 29th, 2007 for the PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable, and Wii. It was later released for PC on November 6th, 2007. In this game, you play as Daniel Lamb in the fictional city of Cottonmouth. In the beginning of the game, you're in a mental asylum when a thunderstorm causes the security system to fail. You're able to break out of the place with the help of Leo Casper, an aggressive, impulse-driven guy who accompanies you on your entire journey throughout the game. Daniel has lost his memory and he doesn't know why he's even in the asylum to begin with, so throughout the game you're trying to uncover Daniel's and Leo's dark histories. The game frequently flashes back to the past where you play as Leo in a variety of areas that help add context to what characters you meet in the current day are telling you. As the game continues, you discover that Daniel was part of this government project to create some kind of perfect assassin, one where they can simply flip a switch and the subject is a completely different person with different memories and different personalities, all that good stuff. One side of that person could be a family man with zero inclination for violence, and the other could be a psychotic murderer who won't think twice about killing someone. Essentially, the game has a far more ambitious story than the first, but I'm not sure if I liked it or not. It does have two different endings, a good outcome for Daniel and a good outcome for Leo. I got the Daniel ending. I won't say what it is because I don't want to spoil it. I don't like doing that, but it left me feeling unsatisfied. The credits sort of just rolled on me unexpectedly. In the first game, which has no connection to this one story-wise by the way, you were playing as a death row inmate named James Earl Cash. James was a terrible person, but he was being used for another man's sick and twisted enjoyment. In Manhunt 2, you're trying to figure out who you are and what you are, but you're not being filmed for the same purpose as in the first game. Daniel Lamb isn't some psychotic serial killer. Am I supposed to feel bad for him as I watch him murder these people in horrific ways? I get that there's supposedly a power struggle between Daniel and Leo, and those Leo missions have serious kill counts, but still, I struggle to find any sympathy for Daniel's character as he's sawing someone's head off with a hacksaw. I got a little ahead of myself there. So Manhunt 2 is still a third-person stealth game. It has similar mechanics to the first, and you're going to be sneaking up on guys to execute them in horrific ways. Manhunt 2 is extremely violent, and it cranks that violence from the first game to 11. The execution system returns from the first game, where you're able to approach someone from behind and then hold the mouse button down to increase how violently you're going to take the guy out. Many weapons also return from the first game, like the grocery bag and the crowbar. There's a whole host of new weapons too, like shovels and hacksaws, each with their own set of 3 executions. I would frequently pick up the newest weapon I found to try and use it, being pretty blown away by the level of violence. The sound of a saw going through flesh is just not something you want to hear too often. Damn, does it sound convincing in Manhunt 2. Adding to that variety of executions are environmental kills and firearm executions. Firearm executions are pretty straightforward and generally involve you tapping the guy on the shoulder and then blowing his head off. The environmental kills are a bit more interesting. These are shown on the minimap as skulls, and when you're within range of one, you'll lift your arm up and you'll hear the heartbeat like you would with a weapon. These range from something like beating a guy with a fire extinguisher to shoving his head into live wires. My personal favorite was this one where you dunk this guy's head in a vat of liquid nitrogen, then you pull him out and smash his frozen head into the vat itself, causing it to shatter like ice. There's another interesting mechanic introduced later in the game where you're able to grab gas cans, and with these you can dump a puddle of gas on the ground and cause your own environmental kill. Sadly, this is only available for a level or two, and it never shows up again. And there's also a bit of verticality in Manhunt 2 that the first game didn't have, so you're able to climb ledges and things like that, and with that you're able to pull off vertical executions where you jump down from above and attack the guy below you with whatever weapon you have equipped. I think I pulled off maybe 3 of these my entire playthrough because there just weren't many places for you to do so. And that's sort of how I feel about Manhunt 2 in general. There are plenty of these interesting mechanics that just don't seem very fleshed out or are just flat out broken. It's frustrating and it just doesn't end there either. So I want to show you guys a scene from the first game. So I'm hiding in the darkness here trying to bring these 2 enemies in the distance towards me. So I went ahead and I hit the dumpster and it brings pulls one over and then he turns away from me predictably and starts to walk away. I'm then able to take him out, walk back to the darkness, and try to bring the other guy over. And when he finally turns his back to me, I'm able to predictably walk up behind him and charge my attack up and get a really cool execution off. Manhunt's mechanics just work, and it allows for longer executions and all that fun stuff. Manhunt 2, however, is a bit of a different story. So here's a clip I took with a sort of similar scenario. So off screen, I had been able to bring these cops towards me, and I killed the first. So I was hiding here in the darkness, waiting for the officer to turn around and walk away. And as he's walking away, he does this half turn and he walks into the dumpster. So I had to kind of wait a bit. Then as I'm trying to approach him again, he just completely turns around and blows my cover. This happens all the time in Manhunt 2, where you'll be approaching an enemy to perform an execution and they'll just do a little stutter step and spot you. It's frustrating because the executions are part of what makes Manhunt so brutal and engaging, and you're not able to do that as often in the second game. The game is sold as a stealth game, but when the AI are as unpredictable as this, it sort of forces you into a corner where you're not able to sneak around as much and instead have to take the enemies head on. Thankfully, the melee combat has improved from the first game, but only if you get the first swing on your opponent. Otherwise, you'll probably be stun locked and helpless as you watch your health bar drain. It's frustrating and it doesn't end there. So I mentioned earlier that firearms return, and while that is true, they're a whole lot less fun to use. In the first game, gunfights felt short, tense, and frantic. You really had to use the cover system to your advantage, moving up tactically, really paying attention to where the healing items are and planning ahead for that. In Manhunt 2, gunfights feel a bit pointless and silly. You have a huge reticle that changes colors depending on what sort of shot you have. So blue is a miss, orange is a hit, and the large red reticle is a lock-on headshot, which results in an insta-kill. Yeah, a lock-on headshot. And there are times where I was just in the general area of my opponent's head and the reticle snapped their head, allowing me to blow it off. It's entirely too easy to run through this game with a gun, and it's strongly encouraged to do so in the last few hours, especially when they give you access to the crossbow. The crossbow is a 2-shot kill to the body, 1 to the head, and it's completely silent. On top of this, you're able to pick up those crossbow bolts and reuse them later. Oh yeah, there's also no drop or travel time, so as soon as you click your mouse, it's a kill. There's nothing tense about this whatsoever, and the colorful crosshair and headshot lock-on make the game entirely too easy and make the game feel like a mediocre third-person shooter rather than a proper stealth game like the first one did. Stealth takes a back seat. The tension is completely lost, and by the end of the game, it feels like a chore to get through. In addition to this, Manhunt 2's levels are just far too bright, and they lack any of the drab dreariness of the first. I get that they're trying to tell a different type of story here, they need different types of settings, but color and lighting go a long way in setting a mood. Manhunt 2 will have you fighting through a hospital, condemned shacks, neighborhood streets, and while I wouldn't want to visit any of these places, it doesn't enhance the game's atmosphere at all. If anything, it just detracts from it. The gore is another thing we have to talk about. So in the first game, you were able to blow off people's heads or knock their heads off, but there was some variety to it. Not every weapon was able to blow off heads, but in Manhunt 2, almost every single weapon shot to the head will result in the same looking gore, the same looking headshot. And since there's that lock on, you better get used to seeing it because you're gonna see it a lot. Seeing the heads explode from even the smallest caliber pistol becomes comical, and it detracts from the dark story they're trying to tell. Another thing Manhunt 2 loves to throw at you are these action sequences where you're being chased, usually by a helicopter where you're running away from it and there are also enemies on the ground that are chasing you. I didn't find these scenes exciting, tense, or meaningful in any shape or form. The first game's tension came from what you made of it. If you killed a guy in a crowd of 4, you were probably screwed. You'd be chased all over the level until you either got out of sight for your second chance or they beat you to death. Manhunt 2 tries to script these sequences and it just doesn't have the same weight of the original's non-scripted sequences. In addition to this, the combat arenas are typically much smaller and don't allow you to backtrack too far. So if you're being chased, you'll be running around in circles, watching your mini-map, waiting for those red arrows to turn orange so you can quickly slip back into a dark area and try again. In the first game, I liked how you could backtrack to an earlier position. It allowed you to get your bearings and attack the next area in a different way without having to load your latest checkpoint. Manhunt 2 instead feels like an exercise in patience. How much crap are you willing to go through to see the next set of executions? Manhunt 2 took me just about 7 hours to complete, which is a little shorter than the first game, and I believe that's due to the fact that the game forces more gunplay on you as the game goes on. The later levels, I was just rushing through with a pistol or a rifle. There's just no reason to be slow and methodical when you have a long-range rifle with an auto-locking headshot. There's just no point. There are other issues in Manhunt 2, but I feel like I've gone on enough. I mean, I don't go into a video expecting to just dunk on a game for 10 to 15 minutes, but this is a sequel to a game I love, and I absolutely felt like I had to be open and honest with you guys. My intention with this channel is to be as honest and open with my audience as I can be, to share my love of video games through video recommendations, but Manhunt 2 is a game that I thought I knew. I thought I knew it better than the first before I replayed them for this channel. I mean, I had it on its release date back in 2007. I know I probably shouldn't have been playing it, but I don't remember it being anywhere near this bad. I mean, nostalgia can really blind you, can't it? Manhunt 2 is such a disappointing sequel, and it essentially killed the franchise with no new entries as of the recording of this video. It fails as a stealth game, it fails as a third-person shooter, it's just a mess. Manhunt 2 is a stain on an otherwise amazing run of Rockstar games in the 2000s, and I don't recommend it. Do yourself a favor and just skip this one. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. This game was such a chore for me to get through. I hate being negative, but I just couldn't avoid it for this one. So, recommendation time. If you like gory games from this era, I'd like to recommend my Cold Winter review. It has this awesome dismemberment system that put a huge smile on my face. If you're more into the dark, serious tone of games like Manhunt instead of the gore, maybe Dark Watch is worth a shot. It's a first-person shooter where you play as a vampire cowboy. It's pretty sweet. As always, have a good one, guys.